Are we podcast touring? That's the question. So those of you that have a large audience, I want to hear from you if you are considering doing a podcast tour. Here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. So I'm watching this podcast episode on Here's the Thing, and my clients send me a ton of Kev on Stage's stuff whenever he talks about anything that's monetization related. So Kev on Stage is talking about how he's thinking about not touring because he said that, it's a lot of risk. Having a tour where you're going to different cities and you have to leave your family, it's a lot, right? And so he made the statement of, I would rather just start another podcast and have a whole nother podcast than to tour and create a tour for this one podcast and spend a bunch of money and put out a bunch of my resources.
I want y'all to understand, you the people lose nothing. If you don't buy a $30 ticket, you lose nothing. I can lose money. I have employees outside of Josh and Angel. Touring is not guaranteed to be successful. There are rappers who have had to cancel tours because they don't sell. I don't take touring lightly. Even something as simple as 4 cities. If I'm going away from my family, I should be coming back to my family with more money than I had when I left.
So I was thinking about this monetization strategy of podcast touring. Podcast touring has become like the biggest thing right now. A lot of folks want to actually be in the room as you're recording a podcast physically. But for his particular channel, here's what I would say to him, right? Because I consult a lot of folks who have a ton of followers. They have a ton of followers. They have an audience. Let's just put it that way. They have an audience. So here's what I would say to him. I think that his gut is telling him the right thing. Now, that chick Angel, she's kind of, going through and saying, I think you're underestimating. And she may, I don't know the insides. I'm just an outsider looking in, giving my little 2 cents about it, the whole thing. So disregard if this doesn't apply. But I believe what he is saying is true. Right now, with Beyonce tickets on an all-time high, Drake is out here trying to do the darn thing right now. You really would need to have loyal listeners in order to do this. Now, I do think that there's some things that are missing in this conversation. One thing that's missing out of this conversation is analytics, right? Are we taking a look at the analytics to see where the most listeners are coming from? Like drilling down to even the city, figuring out the zip codes of the folks that are listening. Where are they? And going directly to where they are so that you can make sure that your ticket sales will be high if you decide to do a tour. Secondly, what a lot of people, what they fail to kind of look into is, guess what? Do they actually even want what you're talking about, right? What does your audience want? Your audience is going to tell you exactly what they want. Do they even want a podcast tour? Did you ask them? I think what needs to happen is a bit of research. I think as creators, what we do is we get into our own heads and we may even stop opportunities before they start because we think that our audience wants one thing when in actuality they want another. So as we kind of move into whether or not to do a podcast live, if your audience is big enough to do a podcast, does your audience even want this to happen? What do they actually want from you? Right? And paying attention to that instead of like, oh yeah, let's just do this thing. A tour is very time consuming to his point. It's very resource heavy, right? Because we got to find a location, a venue. He was talking about how he's traveling with 6 different other folks, and those folks need hotel rooms. They need travel arrangements. Like, it is a lot to have an entourage of people and just be a freaking boss and have employees under you that you have to take care of and pay for. It's a lot. This part I just wanted to show y'all because
creamy Dijon dill chicken. HelloFresh makes it easy to eat.
I love the fact that they just continue to keep recording even though he wasn't on the screen on there. Because some of y'all will just talk yourself out of doing a podcast, recording a video, going to an event, whatever, because you're like, oh, I don't have my stuff together. I ain't got it together. Here, Kev on Stage is like, yeah, nah, here's the content. I'm going to edit it a little bit, but yeah, here you go. He is just putting it out there and he is pushing publish, okay? Because you get paid when you push publish. That's when you make money. When you push publish and you actually put the content out there, you make some sales. Who knew, right? Who knew? So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to show y'all that. So stop making excuses. And regardless, if you got whatever is going on, put the content out there. Don't even trip. Like, put it out there. So I'm bringing this topic up because I feel like this is so relevant to creators right now, right? Just business owners in general. If you have a podcast and you're thinking about doing a podcast tour, when do you know if you should do a tour, and when do you know if you know what? It's a lost cause. I don't even want to do it, right? Because to his point, you're leaving your family. You have to then make all these arrangements. And if you don't make your money back, then it's all for naught. When our audience should be the one guiding us, right? So if we're getting a ton of requests, and he said this, right? He said, I get requests all the time. Hey, come here. Hey, why you ain't do something there? And then y'all don't come out, right? That is an issue. That is a huge problem. So it's like, how do we rectify that problem and make sure that we're making money and monetize our content at the same time? To his point about making more podcasts, I 110% agree. Because then you're looking at the platform paying you and you're just getting paid off the views. And he knows how to manipulate, he knows the algorithm. Let me just say that. Him and the algorithm have shaken hands. They are friends. So now that he knows how to network with the algorithm, right, he can then just start another podcast and have another stream of revenue, and doesn't have to leave his house to do so. If you have another podcast, add on more podcast sponsors, right? Win-win. And you don't have to leave your house again. But I wanted to have this conversation with you all because podcasts are, the whole podcast tour thing is definitely something that can make you a lot of money, but it can also drain your bank account when people don't come out and support. So how do we then monetize and also give back to the people in a way that's beneficial? So here are a couple of my ideas. Now, of course, I would need to see the back end of the analytics on his YouTube, Instagram, look at some of his comments, do a lot of like ground research to give like an in-depth answer and an in-depth strategy. But let me just tell you off the top of my head the type of strategy that I'm thinking. Right now, he has the book. He's done a lot of podcasts around the book. I'm sure between him and his wife and his family, it may not be feasible for him to travel around the book, but I would say that content right now is hot. Anything marriage related, anything relationship related, stay on those topics. Secondly, I would actually go to the audience and ask them what it is that they want. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. Usually what you can do is bring them on a call. You make it a celebratory call. It can either be paid or free. And then you ask them, okay, so why do you listen to the podcast? Why do you follow me online? What are some of the things you would like to get from an experience from us, right? If we did a live tour, what were some of the things you would like to see? The other thing that he needs to do is to start to mix in some celebrities. I know he is a celebrity in his own right. However, I think having a musical guest or two wouldn't hurt the deal. Now, are they going to cost you more money? Yes, but you can absolutely find some folks who are willing to come out and support who may not be as cost heavy, right? Maybe they could come out and do a song or two. Maybe they just come out and do just the jingle. But it's a way for you to also drive concert sales, ticket sales. That's what I'm looking for, the word. Lord, the words are just escaping my mouth. So he needs to look at different partnerships that he can create. He has, I'm sure, connections to the who's who of the who's who. Utilize those partnerships and those connections to leverage it so that he can get more people to the podcast tour if he decides to do it that way. On the other end, if he decides to just create more podcasts, then I would start to bring on some of those celebrity guests. He's already had the main guy, what's the guy on TikTok that does the food review? Keith Lee, that's his name, the Keith. He's had him on. He's talked to him. That episode, I'm sure, got him some dollars from YouTube. But do the same thing in a physical sense. It looks like they had a really great conversation, and they both had really great vibes. So I would then take a Keith Lee out to wherever, maybe do a Keith Lee in Las Vegas, but then different people in different spaces in different cities. I would bring them out to start to get some buzz around the podcast. Those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. Just Peace Digital. Peace. Profitable content.